everyone. Thank you for joining us on Breakthrough, which we are so proud to bring to you. This show is a collaboration between Leaderonomics and Opeaklife. My name is Lisa Wong. I'm a transformation coach at Opeaklife and Mindvalley and a former anchor at ESPN. It's my vision to bring to you the stories of successful individuals and deep dive into how they build themselves to become the person they are. And today, my guest is a well-known name in the art of science of building leaders in Malaysia and Asia. And you have most probably read his articles in papers, heard him speak on the airwaves, hosting shows on LinkedIn, being very active in that space. I'm very excited to have Roshan Thiran, the founder and CEO of Leaderonomics today. Roshan is a former director at GE, Johnson & Johnson, and Star Media Group. I've worked alongside Roshan on a project and I admire his leadership, kindness, and tenacity. Leaderonomics is a social enterprise dedicated to leadership development, and Roshan has authored several books, including Leadership Nuggets, and has written over 300 articles, which have been featured in leading publications, journals, and websites across the globe. Roshan, it's so good to have you on Breakthrough.
Yep, happy to be here. Good to see you, Lisa.
Now, to all our viewers, if you have any comments, please type them in the chat box and our producer Shasi will let me know. Now, I'll pause and when to ask, as and when to ask your questions, so do stay tuned. Now, Roshan, let's start where it all began, your drive and hunger for creating something impactful. Now, if you have to look back at your past, where do you believe that point started?
I think there's many different ways to look at it, because I think in your early childhood you have your parents who play significant roles in terms of molding you and wanting you to be successful, and creating beliefs that you can be successful, right? And then as you go into your teenage years, I mean, for me, a pivotal moment was when I started playing football at the age of 12. So prior to that, I hadn't played football. I was trying to be a sportsman of some kind, but never really made it playing badminton and other sports. And I think when I was 12, I saw the World Cup in 1986, and Maradona won the World Cup with Argentina. And I was very inspired, and I decided to take on football every day. I practice. And then I think at 13 or somewhere around Form 1, I met a coach who became the coach of the MBS, or the Methodist Boys School, where I came from school, Mokhtar Dahari, and me together with about 18 others who were from the age of Form 1 all the way to Form 5, all of us who were picked, 18 of us were picked to go through very intensive training with him over 2 months. That made a big difference, because Mokhtar, not only was he a legend, but he was a humble legend that corrected a lot of issues that we young folks, we dreamed about football and success and so on. But he taught us about hard work, about the fact that success comes through putting a lot of effort. And then of course teachers. I mean, I had a literature teacher who sort of didn't know what to do, but I decided, okay, let's go to this class. Looks easy because you just get to read stories, and then got into literature, got into reading, got into whenever there was injustice in school, I'd be the guy to try to basically sort out the injustice. Had a best friend, Edmund Bond, who later today I think he heads up human rights for ASEAN, a lawyer, and I think he's one of the guys who's always fighting. I think he's fighting for Heidi Kwa now in that case with the government. So Edmund became a friend. Another very close friend is Dr. Goh Chi Leong. Today he's was one of the top psychologists, I think, in Asia, and then he became the dean of Help University, and today he's CEO of educational group, the Real Educational Group, and also the Sri KDU and a couple of others. So I mean, folks like that, we kind of sharpen each other, and we did stupid things together. And then of course university, I think is significant, because when you are in university, I got a scholarship to go. Not from the Malaysian government, but from the university in the US. So I could not qualify, not good enough for the government, in spite of playing football for the state and getting, I think it was 9 A's or something in SPM. But I managed to get a scholarship from a US university. And when I went there, I got to play soccer, but I also got to be president of the student body. And I also got to be start up a newspaper. So a lot of time when I felt that things were not right, I would jump in, and then they say, no, you can't do this. who are you? What you're a sophomore. You can't run for president. Why can't? Is there a rule? No. Okay, I'm running, and I ran and I won. And likewise, I wanted to run the newspaper, and they said, no, you can't. You're not a mass comm major. So what? I think there are things that we need to talk about. And it's okay, fine. I'll start my own newspaper. And some of the faculty, some great professors gave me some money and said, look, Roshan, here, I sponsor you. Go run a newspaper, and we did. So I think all these are foundational. Many foundation. I can't name one, right? There's so many different experiences that molded together enables you to become, right. Whether it's your intelligence, whether it's your secure base, like your parents and Mokta, and I think many teachers become your secure base, your friends, and the sharpening of each other, and the experiences, right. I mean, when you're in school, I remember my headmaster, right. He once told me that, look, Roshan, I always get in trouble, right? So I'm always in his office, either getting some cane or getting my hair cut or something that I would do wrong. And he said, your heart is right. You want to do the right things. But the way you go about it is wrong. I mean, you shouldn't fake a signature of the headmaster for an announcement. I'm like, yeah, but you are not there, and it's much easier to get things done. And then you realize that when you do crazy stuff, that the repercussions of it, the upside is bigger than the downside, right? So I remember Edmund and I, I never forget this. We were very inspired in the 80s by a guy called MC Hammer, who sang this song, Can't Touch This, right? And then of course Vanilla Ice with Ice Baby, Ice Baby, right? So and we were part of a society, and our society nobody attended. So Edmund and I said, look, why don't we during announcement, the prefects will read the announcement, like, it's so boring. So we convinced the headmaster, let us do our own announcement. And he said, okay. And so we went out there, and I'm Hammer Time, right? And Edmund's Vanilla Ice, and we are just rapping there. We have no idea what we're doing. It was the most embarrassing rap, and everybody laughed at us, right? But then at recess, right? So during the first 2-3 periods, everyone laughing at us. But recess, people were, hey, Roshan, you guys cool, man. Assembly was so cool because of you guys. Suddenly, like, hey, wait, a negative thing became a positive. Suddenly we became heroes, right? And you realize that bad things, you wait long enough, may actually turn out to be a good thing, right? And you always say that. I always remember one of my teachers said, look, people thought that when Jesus died, it was the worst thing in the world. But 3 days later, he rose, and boom, it's a very different story, right? So sometimes disguised in failure, disguised in sort of experiences that are negative, is opportunity, is great stuff, right? And I always tell that story to a lot of folks. I'm like, we were so embarrassed, and many times, and we did that over and over, right? I mean, we went to Asunta. I remember it was a girls' school, and it was great for guys to be invited there. And we went there, and we. One day before, we said, okay, we'll put a skit together, we'll do a sketch, and we'll do this. And so we went there, and we had we were totally, like, the sketch didn't come out sketch. Like, it was a bunch of guys talking things that just disconnected, right? But after that, I think girls just don't care. As long as guys are in their school, they're happy, right? So, I mean, in the end, it just became talking points, right? People today don't remember that. But, we ended up making very good friends in Asunta and MGS and BBGS and a couple of the other schools, right? So I think these formative experiences mold you, right? But you just don't know. It's an accumulation of many of them together that enables you to become who you are.
So there was a lot of mischief, but out came a lot of bravado. So you have incredible courage, Roshan. I think you have left a lot of impressions in the girls' school, in your own school. So this courage, this let's just do it. Also, I just want to point out that you had this incredible also opportunity to be trained under Mokhtar Dahari. I mean, one of the legends in football in Asia. Now, I would call and describe everything that you have done, in your life up to this point as complete. You're the epitome of courage. Like when I read about your bio and how you go about, not knowing anything or not having a lot of knowledge about it, but this whole attitude of let's just do it, that makes you, or that grew you to be who you are today. So if you have to give others advice, would you still proclaim this sort of leadership journey, this strategy, or would you tell your young to have a different thing, to have a different journey where just make sure you read up or you learn or you train under someone? What's the advice here?
Yeah, I think each person's journey is different, right? and we all go through different sort of experiences and different, our starting point is different, right? So I come from a different starting point. My father worked in the government, my mother was a school teacher. So we and then I went to a Kebangsaan school. I mean, today kids have different sort of opportunities, right? Many international schools, and even Kebangsaan schools, very different from those days, right? The exposure today in a Kebangsaan school to when I had different teachers. We had a whole cadre of teachers, right? From the ones who couldn't care less and said, okay, what you want to do today? PE, okay, good, go to the field. Or to the ones that pull their ear, and I remember how many chapatis, some teachers will just, chapati is this where they smack your body together for not doing homework and stuff like that, right? So depending on your lot, right? I think for me, it was not so much about trying to do stuff, right? It was trying to figure out what your identity is, right? And I think all of us go through this identity searching phase in life, and probably your secondary school, your university life, probably even your early adulthood, right, is to trying to figure out who you are, what your essence is. And for me, it was to do stuff, right? It was, let me try this, let me try this, let me try this. Some others may be, may not be that doing. They might be, a little bit more reading or listening, or, they want to get exposure from different people. And today with the internet, there's so many different opportunities to do that, right? So I don't know whether there's a prescribed way of doing it. It's just happened to be this way. I happen to also have friends that were crazy, right? To some extent, I remember Chi Leong used to make sure that at least a few times a month we would go down to Rex Cinema, which is down there, and sneak in, and watch a movie, and but sometimes if the movie happened to be a good matinee at 11, which is the cheaper one, you kind of figured out a way how to come out of school, watch it, come back, and be back in school without anyone really noticing too much, right? And we always rationalize, school, you can always catch up, not a big deal, right? So you depending on who your friends are, your access, there's a lot of different things to do. I think today there's so many things. You can start a business at any age, right? I mean, my daughter decided to say, in the holidays, I want to build my own business, and she set up Leaderonomics.com, and she basically selling potato plushies now online. So I mean, that's what level 10 years old, right? I mean, I didn't have that opportunity at that point in time, right? So I think there's a lot of opportunities. I think context has changed from my time, maybe your time, Lisa, but it's a very different time today than it was when I was there. And when I look at the opportunities there is, but it's the same thing, right? I think when I was growing up, there were opportunities to do stuff, but 90% of people chose not to. I think today there's opportunities to do stuff, but 90% prefer to be consumers or users rather than doers or sort of producers, right? So we it's the same, right? I mean, I just think the way, the methodology, you don't have to be pushy and aggressive. It's a different world, but it's still the same. I mean, in terms of the opportunity line.
Well, I definitely love the fun and the joy that you have. So you had a lot of fun in your leadership journey, and also a lot of playfulness that you brought into it. Are you still the same in your company, Roshan? This kind of playfulness that you bring in?
I try to think so lah, but you got to talk to my employees lah, because there's I mean, this is something I learned from, actually one of my employees taught me this. Is like, and I remember Millie, I think, is the one, he's a psychologist who did lots of research. And why is it when town hall, when you speak, everybody keeps quiet and doesn't want to? Then she did this big research and said, look, it's because that, we as Malaysians, in our school system, we have been trained that when the teacher talks, we almost keep quiet and listen, right? So suddenly when you're standing up there and speaking, people suddenly like, oh, this is the teacher speaking, better keep quiet. So even though you may be playful, you may, but there's this sort of belief that kicks in, or that we have like that, and it's not so easy. I think for whatever reason, right, it's still the same. I think many CEOs tell me, like, they are so connected with their employees, but somehow in town hall nobody wants to ask questions and so on. And I think her research, she gave me the 700-page research that she came up with in terms of why don't get frustrated. It's not you, it's the country. But I think think yes, but I think over time you sort of mellow, right? And I think it's not so much a playfulness. I think it's more of um, the desire to get things and achieve certain things, and to enable certain things and to empower people, and I think that the approach can be, you get upset that you're not successful. I mean, I look at ourselves. 2000 was our year. January 2000, we're like, okay, this is the year Leaderonomics is going to be boom. It's going to be a fabulous year. We're talking to investors, everything was ready, and then boom, COVID hits, and then suddenly it's revenue is down to zero, right? I mean, literally, I remember mid-March, our revenue just went down to zero for a couple of weeks, right? Until we figured out how to align ourselves. But those things happen, right? And you still have to be, and I wouldn't say playful, but you still have to look at it and say, okay, that's the hand that's dealt, right? How do we figure out how to overcome what needs to be overcome, or figure out how to take advantage if there's an opportunity, right? So, and it takes time, but everyone's in shock initially, but at some point in time you figure out. And I don't call it playful. I say this nature of optimism, right? That you want to figure out there is always hope, there's always opportunity, regardless of their hand. We can do it. I think every month in the last couple of months, because of what we're doing at Leaderonomics, every month my co-founder and I, Hui Ming, will sit down and we say, look, this is it. No, this is our last month. This is the last amount of cash we have. How and then, this month she did the same thing. A few days ago we were talking, and Hui Ming's like, last month, then I'm like, okay, but we've been saying that from April last year, or March, June last year, or some, after a couple of months, we're saying that for a couple of months, right? And we are still going, right? So okay lah, just tahan another month, and then let's see what happens in October, and let's see what happens in the following month and so on. But we'll get there lah. So I'm like, and I think you just have to figure out how to do it in a way that allows you to sleep well and not get overly stressed about little things in life, like money and payroll and other things.
Wow. Did you just say that in 2020, just that year, you were kind of like had everything ready to go big and go large? Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Now, Roshan,
unfortunately.
I know also that you had a very terrifying experience. And can you share? Because I think that part you did tell, there are a lot of insights that you gained, and it was profound.
Which terrifying experience is this?
Okay, this one that you almost lost your life.
This when I was young, you mean?
The reason when I think you were playing, were you somewhere in a
Oh, okay.
park?
This was recently. Okay, yeah. So okay, this one I think you probably got it from Sashi, right? Yeah, you well, not really lost my life, right? So I mean, there was we were playing football in a game, and lightning struck the field, I think, and unfortunately for a player who was very near me, he got. I think he was. I really don't know what happened, but we saw his shirt had burnt, and he was wearing a metallic chain or something. And unfortunately for him, he passed away. Almost a couple of minutes after the incident. And a few of us were struck down by lightning, including the national women's player who just played for the women's national team, Andrea Lee. She scored for Malaysia a couple of days ago against Palestine, when Malaysia beat Palestine. And Andrea, so I keep telling Andrea, it's because prior to this, Andrea never used to score goals. Now she's scoring goals like crazy, and I stopped scoring goals. So I have a feeling that somehow when a few of us got struck, Andrea was one. She was actually hospitalized for a couple of days. We some power, my scoring ability must have transferred over to Andrea, I think, but it happened, but it helps you, right? I mean, I know many of the players were there. We saw this person who had passed away, and most of us, I think there were 4 or 5 of us who were struck, who our heartbeat, I mean, I remember when the nurses came to check, our heartbeat was like 200 something. That was probably 30 minutes or 40 minutes after the incident. And we it's kind of you kind of have a realization like, ooh, life is precious, right? I mean, could have been me, right? I mean, it could be any of us, right? It just happened to be, unfortunately, one of the players over there. And yeah, so I mean, it is, but I mean, throughout my life, I like I said, these things happen. I remember when I was young, I was driving, and I saw an accident right in front of me. Car turned, and I actually was my car turned and spinned, but somehow, you know, it was a junction in Bangsa where somehow all the 4 junctions, somehow the cars just stopped in time. It's heavy rain, but they just stopped, and you know, my car spinned and like 360, and it was like right there. And then about an hour later, I drive back, and there's a big accident there, a car exactly in the same spot, and I think it's very slippery. And unfortunately, I think the person, you know, from what I read the next day, is the person in the car passed away. It was a fatal accident. So I'm like, oh, that could have been me, right? So I think many of us go through that, right? But I think it's always a sobering thought to know that life is precious, and you know, we need to make the most of it, right? My favorite quote is by Helen Keller, who says, "Life is either a daring adventure or nothing." Right, so it's really about making the most of your life, right? All the time, the little time that we have.
Right. So listening to what you said, right, and also the fact that COVID hit, and you have this great vision. And one thing about you is that how big do you play, Roshan? Like, you know, you have Nicole, which is an amazing platform, and I know that a lot of investment that gone into it. So how big? I know great leaders want to play at a high level, and I also know that you take big risks. So how big, first of all, how big is your risk appetite? And secondly, how big in life do you want to go? Because there's this vision of you to wanting to make Leaderonomics a unicorn company.
Yeah, so I think that there's two parts of Leaderonomics, right? When we first started out, the first and foremost mission was to transform Malaysia, right? And you know, many of us after this latest fiasco, you know, in 2020 with the backdoor government, and now again with another backdoor government, you know, many of us feel very disappointed that, hey, you know, all the things that we've worked for transforming the country has gone down the drain, right? So, but when we started Leaderonomics, the goal was to transform the country, and maybe Malaysia may be a lost cause, who knows? But we know countries like Indonesia, Thailand, India, you know, there is people who want to transform and people who want to change, and so that's always been the goal of Leaderonomics, is to drive transformation, both personal and organizationally, and also community-wide, right? And how do we build really different communities, not of hate and fear, but of love, right? And so that's primary goal. But one of the things I learned when I was helping in NGOs and consulting with some of the NGOs is this: you know, when you work at NGOs, people have good heart, and many times when these employees of NGOs retire, there's nobody to take care, because they've not accumulated any wealth. It's unfortunate, right? I mean, they give their life to doing social good, but the world doesn't give them back what they've given to the world in terms of helping people and enabling communities and so many things, right? And so when we started Leaderonomics, one of the first point is like, look, we must do what the work that we're called to do, right? Which is to transform, which is to enable, which is to empower, which is to execute and build this better community and better world that we've been called to do. So that's a given, and the way we do it is by enabling one person to become a better leader so that they can transform the communities that they serve, right? And if we do that for many leaders, you have many communities, you see national transformation. Right? So that one is that. But the second piece is, I want to make sure that people who journey with us, right, are well taken care of. And the way to do that is to ensure the value of your organization continues to grow. And so when we set up Leaderonomics, is look, I think it's very important, and we always say our social impact is much more important than the profitability. However, right, profitability, sustainability is so equally is important for the long run. Maybe we can lose money in the first few years. Maybe we can lose money in 2020, 2021. But at some point in time, not only we're going to be profitable, we're going to build certain ecosystems that is going to be very valuable. And the value of this ecosystem, right, will be transactable, meaning somebody will say there is a market value to Leaderonomics, right? I'm going to put in 100 million, 200 million, 500 million, whatever it is, right? And so today we are at about 160 million ringgit, right? So we're about 40 million US, and that's the latest investment dollars that have come in, right? I mean, so we've actually raised money at that valuation of 160 million. So if you think of a social enterprise that's valued 160 million, you know, ringgit, which is 40 million US, right? That's pretty good, right? I mean, so and the investors obviously see something, right? So whether it's the MAD ecosystem, and Lisa, you were part of the MAD movement, which is one part, right? We got MAD projects, we got MAD summits, we got MAD volunteer, and there's a whole MAD ecosystem. But then we also have a club ecosystem. So we've got hundreds and hundreds of schools in Malaysia, in Nepal, in Cambodia, that the Ministry of Education in these countries allow us to go into schools to build clubs. So we have that club ecosystem. But that's just on the community side, right? We also have organizational ecosystem. We're doing work for Toyota, we're doing work for Maxis, we're doing work for TNB, IS Lango. I mean, it's an endless list of companies that we do communal work. We also do corporate work, right? I mean, we do development, but we also have a digital business, and we have apps like Nicole that we've built, and Happily, and Budaya, and Mental Cloud, and many others, right? Whether it's a partnership or it's something we co-build. And sometimes it's borrowing technology or taking technology from somebody else, and like a sandwich, right? We take the bread comes from somebody, but then we build parts. So afterward, you got a new sandwich that, yeah, okay, there's bread, the first part of the loaf comes in, but the entire sandwich is a Leaderonomics product, right? And we know there's value there, right? So for me, the value is not for the value is not because, I want to build a unicorn because I want to be like Anthony Tan and be the richest guy and so on and so forth. Okay, fine, grab, and we do this by doing specs and this and that. I mean, that's not the point. The point is that we really want to build valuation based on something that's real, right? We really want an ecosystem that is transactable and that is valuable, right? Because at the end of the day, right, and that's why every employee in Leaderonomics, everyone, including employees that have left, right, they are shareholders of the company. So we've got 80 over shareholders. And so if you've been in Leaderonomics for more than a year, and even our producer Sashi has shares in Leaderonomics, he's an owner of the company, right? So we've got 80 over employees who are shareholders in the company, right? On top of the investors, right? And we made it very clear, half the company is owned by employees, right? The other half is owned by investors. And maybe the model will dilute down to 30% owned by employees and 70% by investors, but that's okay because, as an employee, you used to own maybe a 40 million company, then it's 100 million, now it's 160 million, right, ringgit. Maybe down the road, it's $1 billion ringgit, right? Maybe it's $1 billion US, right? And so your 30% is going to be huge, right? You got 30% of $1 billion US, it's still better than 50% of 100 million ringgit, right? And the value is for you because you've journeyed with Leaderonomics, because you've helped and enabled us, right? Down the road, we want to make sure in 10, 20, 30 years, when you transact your shares, right, you have money for your retirement, you have money to enable you to be rewarded for the good work that you do with us, right? And so the longer you stay with us, employees that stay long with us, end up with many, many more shares, right? Or the opportunity to buy even more shares, right, at a very cheap price, right? And so to me, it's not so much, as a social enterprise, our primary goal continues to be our social mission. And we always make those decisions. We say, look, if we have to spend this dollar now or save the dollar and get more profitable, we'll spend this dollar if it's going to bring social impact. However, in the long term, and we say long term, talking 10, 15, 20 years, right? We want to make sure that we make some important decisions that enable us to drive valuation. So not so much profitability, which is what people think about too today, but it's valuation, right? Because valuation has long-term impact, whereas profitability gives you money this year to give a bonus, but it's gone, right? When I give you valuation, 20 years down the road, your 1,000 shares are worth $1 million ringgit. Wow. You are going to be like, wow, I'm a millionaire for having worked at Leaderonomics, right? And that's great. And that's what we want to do, right?
Right. So you can breathe a sigh of relief then, you and your co-founder, with this whole money that just flowed in from your investors. Yeah, Roshan.
For a while, I mean, like we said, money. You see, with digital, and I've got my digital employees. Some of them here, digital is like a monster that sucks money, right? I mean, you just throw in, boom, 80,000 is gone in 1 month. 100,000 is gone 1 month, right? So you can raise a million, and it will just go in 2 months or 3 months, right? So it's there's always need to raise, and I think we are actually in the process of talking to. We are finishing up our Series A right now, and we are still in the process of talking to a couple of bigger investors, individual investors, to come in and really enable us to get to the next level of traction, which is to get to that 100 million sales and revenue levels.
All the best to you. We have some comments here. Roshan, one from Shashi Wag says, was there a point where it got to be too much and you just didn't want to continue? What did you do?
Yeah, I mean, it happens every day, right? I mean, every day you say, why am I doing this? And, I know my co-founder who always tells me, like, you just go and do your thing, right? I mean, you can charge, like, for one speaking engagement, you can charge this crazy money. You just do it by yourself. You're done and dusted. Why do you need to go through this pain of Leaderonomics and all these things, right? But I think, like I said, our goal was much different, right? It's not so much about making money, right? It's really about national transformation, right? And I mean, it'd be nice to see Malaysia, really transform. I don't know whether we'll see that in our lifetime. I mean, not the way things are going in our country today, but hopefully we'll see Indonesia transform. I mean, I'm very excited about Indonesia. I know many of my Indonesian employees. We've got a whole bunch of them, and they're like, Roshan, time for you to move to Jakarta, and time for you. I'm like, no, I'm moving straight to Borneo, to your new capital, right? And I'll be Indonesian all the way, man. And so but when there's hunger, right? There's hunger to transform. In Indonesia, there's hunger to transform. In Vietnam, there's hunger, right, to grow. You want to be part of that. I know I was in the early days from 99 in China, right? And to see the Chinese from 99 to 2008, I mean, most of my friends in China are billionaires today, right? And part of it is the fact that, in 2007, 2006, they quit GE and they started up their own companies. And 10 years later, everybody's a billionaire essentially in China, right? But I mean, to me, right, that hunger, right, will translate to something real.
Eva Lim has this question. Now, if given an opportunity, would you respond differently when the pandemic strike? And are there any tips to share with audiences, especially those who are exploring a better way to go through the challenging times before we enter 2022?
Yeah, when the pandemic hit, about a week before we went into lockdown, I got the whole team together and said, look, we're going to go into lockdown. I've seen it happen in other countries. We're going to go there, right? So, we're going to lose all our business. We need to pivot. We need to get all your deliveries into virtual. And of course, they're like, no. Anyway, and then it happened, right? But, good news is that within a day or two, today this guy leads my Nigesh, put him aside. No, Nigesh, we need to figure out how to do this. And so we partnered with HRDF and we launched the first ever webinar series the day after lockdown, it was launched, right? Together with HRDF. We talked to Maybank, Dr. Nora. I said, Nora, we are ready. Let's go. And Maybank came in, right? And so we started, even though it was so small. I mean, it's like a little bit of revenue, a few hundred ringgit a year for webinars. But it was something, right? And it kept the team going because they had things to do. They had things to learn. We mastered every single tech that are out there, whether it's Zoom or Big Marker or Webinar Jam, every single one of it, we are masters of it, right? And we know it inside out, right? From Teams to, because we went into a period of, and I had to make certain decisions. I said, look, this business is going this way. I don't care. And after 3 months, there were leaders that didn't quite agree. No, things will go back. The HR people say they want physical classes. Not going to happen, right? And so we had to make some executive decisions and say, look, that's it. We're going to go there. You either do it or, I'm sure there are other organizations that they want to do the classroom bay, go for it, and I think, in January this year, February this year, and we started to see March, April, and the whole thing went back into this whole tailspin again in 2022, right? A lot of the decisions we made of streamlining our organization, we were about 70, 80 people. We streamlined down to about 50. And we did it very slowly. I mean, we took our time, right? We tried to keep as many, but 2020 was supposed to be a year that's very profitable. We ended up losing 3-4 million ringgit because we kept people, because we kept trying to keep getting revenue sources in different ways, but just our cost base was just too big, right? So I think the only difference I would make is probably to take some of those decisions a bit faster. We knew we had to make it, but we somehow deep down, I was like, okay, I'm sure it'll get better, right? But the reality, and I think I told our employees, I said in April, I said, this one is going to be 2 years, right? Maybe 3, right? And half, I didn't want it to be that. I mean, this is not a desire. This is what I thought it was going to be. But the deep desire was like 3 months and it's done, right? But the reality is 2 years and we are still, at this point where it doesn't seem very hopeful that, will we end the year better? I'm not sure. Will there be a third wave, as you see in many of the other countries, in Europe and so on? I don't know, right? So we don't know, but I don't know whether we would. To me, the only thing is maybe the speed, right? Because we didn't know, right? Now, on hindsight, that this was going to be 2 years, so we should have just, done and dusted and kept our organization structure much more lean, from the get go, right? But that's how the hand was played,
Mm-hmm. Catherine has a question asking, prior to your experience with GE, were there values and skills that you incorporate before you founded Leaderonomics?
I
Or
think
what were the values and skills?
I mean, it's hard to pinpoint specifics lah, but the Leaderonomics values. One value we have is relationships, right? And it's not relationships with it starts with the relationship with yourself, right? Do you have a good relationship with yourself? Do you love yourself? Then it's relationship with others and relationship with God, right? And those were the foundations of our relationship. We also have another value that's building the future, right? We don't want to be an organization that does training and development or whatever it is, technology. We want to build the future. So even when our digital team said, look, I know we can build a learning management system, but that's not the goal. The goal is to build the future. The future means is learning that is not just automated, but learning that is just in time, which means that, look, Lisa suddenly gets a problem. I have a problem. What do? You Google it, right? And then you get that learning. So, but instead of that happening, the AI knows you so well that they know when your email comes in and they see email budget and say, Lisa, sure cannot do budget one. Boom. Hey, Lisa, you just got an email budgeting. Don't worry. Here's a quick video. You have to watch this and then go do your budgeting. And by the way, I've allocated 25 minutes to do it. So, and because that's about the time it takes to do. So you see that learning can happen today with technology, right? Nobody's built it. And that's what we are doing, right? That's what Clayton is, right? That's what Nicole is the precursor to, right? So to me, that the values of always trying to be ahead, right? To build a future, relationship, giving is another big value that's very unique, right? I mean, I haven't really seen many organizations. And we always say this, right? Give first, you'll get later, right? But you want to give, and at points you want to take also, right? I mean, to me, I don't have a problem giving, but I also don't. Today I've learned that I need to ask. Hey, Maybank Foundation, please, you need to sponsor our Med Summit. Hey, you guys need to come and help us here, right? Because we need it, and it's good. The money doesn't go to me; the money going to kids to do projects, right? But you need to ask also, right? And so giving is a value, and we say give first, right? Because everything will get equalized. The more you give, ultimately, when you ask, you will get, right? Because if I've given you something very easy for me to ask you to, hey, you want to help me out here or not? And usually, if it's a decent enough project, you would, right? And I mean, you've helped us a ton, right, Lisa?
And I enjoyed it because one thing about Leaderonomics is that you have this social enterprise value where you want to give back and you want to impact community, and that's what I love about the company. It's doing good, it's making good. Roshan, so as a leader, some of your blueprints, it looks like you have cultivated from school, where you have this amazing energy and vibrancy and robustness in your character to be able to attract a lot of people, a lot of friends. So networking has always been one of your strength points, would you say?
I don't think so, right? I never really had that many friends. I think what was interesting is that I was always doing something interesting that attracted people, right? So I don't think it's because of your woo capability, right? I don't, I think if you put me in a hall with a whole bunch of people, I'll be the quiet one in the drink, not really captivating. But you put me in front of an audience and I'm like, guys, I got this great idea, and then people just, all right, sounds good, let's go, and to me that part energizes me, right? Because it's about being curious about, hey, we should do something to fix Malaysia. We should, do something to fix MBS. We should do something, and when a couple of years ago when we first started the first club, right? It was my old school. My headmaster, not my headmaster, but the current headmaster, Mr. Wong, who had taken over MBS, and he's like, hey, I heard you're an alumni of the school. How can you come and help us? And I'm like, what do you want? What's wrong with your school? Then he's like, the teachers are like that. Okay, I tell you what, you get the teachers, put them all in the staff room, come on, let me go speak to them. And then I started speaking to teachers and I say, what's your problem? And when the teachers start to say stuff, I'm like, okay, I've got this idea. Then I'm like, Mr. Wong, let's do this. And then I said, I said, how are we going to do this? Don't worry, I will call the alumni. So then I called the alumni and said, guys, all these crazy things to do. All of them, okay, very good, excited, boom. I didn't do much, right? Because the alumni association do it. But to me, it's about connecting, right? It's about that curiosity to say what's wrong, how can I? And to me, I don't think it's about networking. I mean, a lot of people think it's about networking. Oh, I need to go there and schmooze, and so I don't do much of it. Really, I honestly don't do much of it. But if a CEO and I had this many, I remember the Citibank CEO many years ago, Sanjeev Nanavati called me and said, hey, I read your article and I want to talk to you. And Then I thought, and then we got excited. I was like, Roshan, let's do this. And then suddenly he's like teaching classes for me. He's doing this. I'm like, same thing happened with Zainal Abidin Jalil, the former Malakoff, So Zainal are talking, and I'm like, Zainal, you should teach her. Come on, you got this. Okay, I'll do it. I'll put a few presentations for you. And then boom, and then suddenly Zainal's a teacher, right? Same thing happened. Lee Lung Yan, right, from Citibank, right? A couple of years later, and Lee is telling, Lung is telling his stories and so on and so forth. And to me, it's not that I'm searching for this, right? It's have conversation. I'm curious about you. I'm curious about what you do. Let me see if I can connect you with something that will give you meaning, right, to your life. And maybe there is, right? And usually there is, right? So many times I've seen people who want something to do. I'm like, yeah, come and volunteer at Leaderonomics. I know, I don't know if people know this, but when we first started a company, we had so many volunteers, right, who volunteered, right? And I don't know what to do, right? I pay them in t-shirts, right? I'm like, hey, Renee, I give you t-shirt. Every week I give you one t-shirt, one dial t-shirt. It's like, okay, I got 25 t-shirts now, and I've been giving it to my friends. I'm like, okay, cool. So it's branding for us, right? Everybody's wearing Leaderonomics t-shirts now. But I got nothing to pay you. I felt so bad, right? Sashi, our producer recently, and Andrea, they went out there and said, look, because one of our board members is Paul Marca, who was formerly the provost of Stanford University. And Paul was saying, Roshan, there's so many jokers in Stanford who are not studying because of the pandemic. They just decided to take a semester off. Go and get them and ask them to do some work for you. Don't need to pay them, right? And so we started a Leaderonomics global internship program, right? And we did it in 2 weeks, right? We launched it. We sent emails to Yale, to Fordham, to all these universities and say, hey, anyone want to do interns? So we ended up getting interns from Mexico, from the US, from Indonesia, from Vietnam, from I don't know how many countries, right? Brunei, like every like whatever countries you got it, right? And we picked 30 out of the 300-400 people that applied. And suddenly I got 30 folks that were engaged with us, right? But it's really about that, right? It's about, you can say that I got no resources, but the world is full of people that want to help you. It's how do you tell them your story in a way that says, I'm connected with that story, I want to help, right? And I think people will. So I don't think it's about networking. I don't know. I've never really believed in. I hate it. I mean, honestly, I don't like to go for all those things. You ask me, I'm like, I really don't like. Although people think I do, it's not something. Yeah, it's not me. I'm a little bit more introverted in that sense.
I have to say, I mean, knowing you and also hearing you speak, it has to do with the gift of giving. Because if you're always looking to give back and help people, I think that's always a draw. It's a very natural draw for people to come to you, because kindness kind of, it gives and befriends more kindness. Now, as a leadership builder, and I think it's also natural for somebody like you with your characteristics, Roshan, to be a leadership builder. So building leaders, impacting communities, is that the vision of yours? Because you're saying, the whole thing about Leaderonomics being a social enterprise is to give back. And for you, that vision, even in your LinkedIn page, saying this quote, and I quote you, by empowering others to realize their potential, we can work together to successfully tackle social issues such as poverty and inequality. Your vision, in a nutshell, is to transform our country and other communities farther afield, one leader at a time.
Yeah.
So,
and yep. And it's actually a very simple vision, right? If you think about most of the problems of the world is either caused by a leader or lack of leadership, right? So if you look at many of the problems in Malaysia, it's leaders that are causing it, right? Or lack of leadership, right? Or lack of good leadership, right? And you think about communities. Communities thrive, they rise and fall on leadership, right? So if you can take one person and make them to be a better leader. Now, this person may not be a leader of a community, may be the leader of a home. So it's a father or a mother who is a parent to their kids, and that's leadership, right? And if that home is a better home because of better leadership, because of the work that we do to make them a better leader. Now, if you take another person and enable them, and they become, I don't know, head of a community, rukun tetangga, or if they head up whatever, right, a village, or they may be heading up a company, or they may be heading up a small organization, a small medium enterprise, whatever it is, right, or an NGO, right. If you have made them into a better leader, a wiser leader, a leader that loves, that is there for service, not for self interest, right. If you have enabled someone to transform into a better leader, the communities that they serve will become better communities, for sure. right? You've seen that across the board. You've seen that with Apple, with Jobs there, making it a better company. And the moment he goes, it becomes horrible. And then he comes back, becomes better. And then he goes, and then it's just horrible company again. And so on with Starbucks, with Howard Schultz coming in, going out, coming in, going out. You see that, right? I mean, it's no Jack Welch with GE. And you see that in countries, right? What happened to the Roman Empire? What happened to Napoleon? What happened to Gandhi? And I mean, it's happening all the time, right? Great leadership. You see that in Indonesia with Jokowi and all these guys are making such a big difference, right? So it's about getting and enabling that one person to be a leader and making that community thrive. And to me, we think it's a formula that might work, right? Now, obviously, we don't know how to. I mean, our goal is to scale it, right? Because I can do it for 100 leaders, 1,000 leaders, 10,000. But how do you do it to millions and millions of leaders, right? And that's where technology comes in, right? I think there's a comment just now from Eva who says, she thinks artificial intelligence may do a better job than one spouse in terms of understanding his interest in learning, and that's true also in terms of scaling capability, right? Because if I can use technology to enable us to scale leadership development, right, through Nicole, or even engagement through Budaya, right, and other apps, right, I now can actually enable us to do the work that we do for one person, one by one, into many, one to many, one to many, one to many, and that enables, can you imagine that millions of people become better leaders, right? That means that millions of communities that are helped, right, and that means that potentially can be hundreds of nations that get transformed, right? And it's a very simple goal, right? And we don't get government assistance. We don't want. I mean, we'd love to get it, but we don't get it. But we go ahead regardless of whether the government assists us or not, because it's not. And I really fundamentally, I was telling a friend today. I said I fundamentally believe government is gone, lah. It's the age of companies, the age of governments, are all gone, right? The future is about networks, right? So I can build a network, and the only reason we have governments is to charge tax, right? So I decide I want to be based where, because ultimately, and I realized this with Leaderonomics, right? I can have employees all over the world in a network, right? And my network is much bigger than any government, right? Or any bigger than any other company or whatever you call it, right? And I think it's going to be a network world, right? And I think this is the big revolution. When we talk about IR4, I think it's the network revolution that's going to be impacting the world. So, to me, I think there's a lot more. And again, of course, we are unfortunately in this next 80 to 100 years of transition, just like the Industrial Revolution from the 1880s all the way up to 1950s, right? With World War II and all the displacement that happened, right, because of the Industrial Revolution, right? And finally there was stability, and then boom, now we have another revolution in place, right? So that unfortunately the next 50, 100 years will be very transitionary years, but ultimately we will start to see a new shaping of the world, right? And at the same time, even in networks, leadership is the differentiator, because even in networks, you need people to stand up and have that vision, stand up and tell that story, stand up and do that, right? So I think the work we do will supersede work of governments or companies, all these other things. It's the work that has to happen for this world.
Yes, I do see that vision of yours, Roshan. So talking about leaders and building leaders, tell us now. It all begins with self-leadership, and you have shown in your journey that self-leadership is truly vital in building your own leadership blueprint. When it comes to the art and science of building leaders, I'm sure Leaderonomics have put together frameworks and models. Tell us about what would be the leadership blueprint, or something that that encapsulates the art and science of building leaders. What are the key attributes?
Yeah, I wouldn't say attribute lah. So I think we have this sort of process called the science of building leaders lah, and I'm not sure whether we can flash that, but it's encompassing a couple of elements lah. I think the building block of leadership is character, right? So and character is three types. There's moral character, there's performance character, and there's intellect character, right? So moral character is like Mother Teresa, right? I morally, because of your upbringing, right? She has, whether it's integrity, giving, I mean, all these moral characteristics or moral values that she holds on to. Now, performance character is slightly different. It's like I need to have a character of performance, zest, curiosity, self-control. I mean, these are all characters that drives performance, right? And there's 7 or 8 different characters, right? And then there's intellectual character, and this one is different for different regions, right? Because in Malaysia, maybe, intellectually, these are beliefs, right, that we get seeded from young. Oh, we are Malaysian means we are lousy. We're not as good as the Americans or the Europeans or this or that, right? And today maybe it's the Chinese and so on. So, but these get seeded, right? From family, from parents, from you're Indian, you're Indian first gangsters, and so on. So you got this intellectual character that's embedded, and over time, right, this character becomes values. Values become sort of solidified in us to create attitudes and ultimately create actions and behaviors. So, again, the science of building leaders is fleshing out. So character is one piece of values, but there's also influence. Who, influence you, your formative, your secure bases. Moqtadari is a secure base. So your parents are your big secure base. The more secure your base, the more confident you become in life, right? You also have your self-awareness, the identification of who you are and what you're trying to do and forming. Then there's intelligence that's developed. There's decision-making capability. And then there's critical events. And that one is extremely important, the critical events, right? Because critical events ultimately will dictate, if you think about trauma, right? Trauma is very bad when you're young, under the age of 12. But above the age of 12, trauma actually drives you to think about life, like lightning strikes and so on and so forth, right? It actually helps you to think about, what's my vision, what's my purpose, and it connects purpose. So when Mothers Against Drug Driver, the mother whose son was killed, right? She got galvanized by that trauma or that situation to create Mothers Against Drug Driver. That's the vision, right? And you notice, like Spider-Man, right? When Uncle Ben died, right? Or Bruce Wayne, right? When the parents were killed, trauma created, my goal is to get rid of criminals from the streets. And you see this, it's not superheroes, you think it's not real, but it's real. No, even Howard Schultz, right? He saw his father die as a train conductor, because the father didn't have any benefits, he purposed his life to build a company where part-timers get full-time benefits. And that's for Starbucks. It was not about coffee. It was about solving the pain that he saw, the trauma that he had, seeing his father go through that, right? And so, all these things, and this is what we call the science of building leaders, right? This whole framework, right, has different elements to it. And sometimes, we put an age, but actually it's not age bound because it's not linear. You can go all over, right? 7 years old, something bad can happen to you, or 20 years old, something bad, and so on and so forth, right? But these things help you shape your vision. These things together with your character. So Hitler may have had some Jewish kid who bullied him, and because he had strong performance character, very little moral character, he decided, okay, I'm going to become a greatest leader ever and destroy this group of people, right? Whereas Mother Teresa, when she saw somebody get bullied, she said, my goal is to help them, is to help the poor kids in and ultimately led her to that vision of opening up the ashram. So you can both aspire to be great leaders, but the combination of moral character, your combination of character, your upbringing, your influences in life, the combination of that makes you into a great leader or not, or a great leader, but not necessarily has a leader who has leadership skill, but not necessarily a great leader, right? A sound leader, a statesman like Nelson Mandela and others, right? Because you got the skills of leadership, right? But you not necessarily have the character of a leader who wants to serve and wants to give, right? So that's, it's a very quick explanation. This one we can talk for hours on the science of building leaders, but we've developed this, and we've also got organizationally, also we find the science of transforming organization, where we find that certain problems in our companies stemming from a couple of core issues, and if you solve these core issues, everything else gets solved. So in a short nutshell.
So what do you look for then? Before I jump into my next question, Eva says that, how would you identify and polish the hidden gems? And are there any particular values that these individuals should exhibit, as there are many companies that offer management trainee programs?
So I think when you talk about hidden gems, right, my favorite story, which I wrote about, was about Marvel Comics. So I don't know if anyone knows Marvel Comics. Marvel Comics was about to collapse in the 90s, right? Many CEOs came in and they tried to transform it. It's just a comic book collections, right? Until this guy came in the mid-90s, the CEO, he's like, look, I think we shouldn't be looking for business models. We should be looking for hidden gems that we have, and then figuring out how to build from the gems that we have. And so he said, what's our gems? And after a long exhaustive, he said, look, our gems is this. We have 5,000 villains and 5,000 superheroes, and we should, we need to be a talent agency. So we have already talent. Our talent are all these superheroes, and we need to find ways to get royalty by using this talent in different ways. And that's how they went into the MCU and that whole franchising and this and that and all kinds of things, right? And I think the same thing happens for us, right? You know, everyone has hidden gems inside of us. It's there, right? We need to go deep into ourselves and figure out what these are, and then we need to leverage them, right? And sometimes we focus so much on weakness and trying to be better. I think the trick is like Marvel, look inside, and inside you'll find that yeah, I've got the Spider-Mans and you know, prior to 99, all these were not valuable at all. I mean, nobody could see, we got these old characters, with old comics, we've got this, we've got books, we've got printing. The philosophy is wrong because they're thinking about comic books and so on. But when they started to realize what is it that you have, then suddenly the whole thing changed, right? Because now that I know what I have, okay, how can I then monetize it? How can I then take advantage of it, right? And I think the same thing with each of us has to ask, right? Is you want to polish something, you need to figure out what that is, right? And you'll be very surprised what your strengths are. It may be very different from what you think it is, right? But once you understand what it is, right, then you can fully leverage it. You'll be like the MC, you know, Marvel's just boom, deal with Netflix for Defenders and then deal with this and like, okay, you got this Spider-Man, okay, this fella get this, or even one of the Singapore companies that Star used to have, they signed a deal, Avengers, and paid don't know how many million for. So I mean, Marvel is just like, you know, and then of course Disney bought them over, right, at some point in time. But you know, it's there are gems in everybody's life, you know. It's figuring it out, that's the hard part. But once you do, I think the leveraging part is easy.
So every one of us have, as you say, we have our own superpower, what you call gems. Now, when you do look at leaders, Roshan, what do you look for? Perhaps the top 3 to 5 characteristics that would make a good leader.
Yeah, I think it's very, you know, first I say, what is the vision, right? I mean, what is it that you want to, because, you know, if your vision is to be best parent, the skills requirement may be very different. I want to be CEO of SimWP, I want to be CEO of you know, whatever. I want to take over from Lisa as the host of Breakthrough. You know, what if somebody has that aspiration, right? So, you know, it's very different skills, right? So once you know what that vision is, then you say, okay, do you have that skills? And then you try to figure out what the gap is, right? And you say, how big is that gap, right? And then you know, that's where you assess for potential, right? Can that person actually fill that gap? And if they can, then, you know, that's going to be a superstar, right? Because you know, at the end of the day, you know, if I bring somebody in Leaderonomics, I say, look, this is our vision. If there's no alignment, and that person may have all the skills we want, you know, it's going to be, and then you make a call, okay, I can bring the person in for 6 months to a year. They're probably going to go anyway. So maybe we do a gap, but, you know, it's better to bring somebody with less skills, but has the runway to get there. And then we allow them to take that 6 months and build that runway. And then after that, we can just see them fly, right? So sometimes you make those calls, right? But to me, I think those would be the key things. Like, you got to understand what the end goal is for each person. If you understand that, then you can see the alignment and you can see the gap, and then you try to, as best as possible. I mean, there are other things like attitudes and stuff, but it's very hard to say. I mean, the past is a good reflection of the future, but not necessarily always a case also, right? And we've seen that, right? Because sometimes intellectual capacity is very important. You know, my old boss, Gary Reiner in GE, right? He once, I coffee him once many years ago. He was the CIO of GE, and he's a big guy, like the number 2 or number 3 guy in GE. I think it was 97 or 98. I was having coffee with him. He's like, you know, so he said, you know, I asked him one question, Gary, you know, I see you interview, because he said, I'm going for an interview. So, actually, you're doing interview. How do you interview? How do you know this person is good? I mean, they're all like McKinsey consultants, and because he's interviewing all these big time guys, right? He said, you know, mine is very easy. I have a cup of coffee and a meal with them, and, you know, if we can have a good conversation on something interesting, and, you know, probably I'll hire them. But, you know, if we cannot have a good conversation and we cannot be good friends, I had no point hiring them. Because, and I thought it was quite interesting because it's, you know, if you can, and I think what he's saying is ultimately is about that relationship piece, right? If you can connect and if you can see, I won't say chemistry, but if you can, because most people that come to his level, they've already been filtered 100 times by different people, right? So now it's really about, you know, is that person, you know, able to fight with you, push you, and instigate you, right? And, you know, people that enable that are like, oh, I'm excited, right? Because I'm going to be around people that can actually sharpen me as much as I sharpen them, right?
So it's a lot to do with emotional intelligence, Roshan, and also their capacity to I suppose, have the values and the understanding of where you are at that level. Now, you're talking about runway. So skills sometimes may not be as important, but having the runway. So when you refer to runway, is it more towards the values? So perhaps, when it comes to a person who has this desire, this drive to want to constantly achieve and always elevating, always leveling up, always wanting, to build, to gain, to learn, that growth mindset, it's always pushing. Is that what you mean?
Yes and no lah. I think I think drive can take you. It's more the fuel of what drives you lah, right? Because I think when I was younger, I was driven to want to become CEO of GE. But at some point in time, that drive sort of mitigates and disappears. Like, I don't want to be lah. I want to be something else. I want to be something else, right? So when you look at a person who is passionate about something that's really real in their life, right? Whether you say no to them, they'll find a way to make it happen again, right? And I've seen this, with folks that say, I don't care, I want to work for GE, I want to work for Leaderonomics, and I'm like, no, and everybody says no to them, and they'll find a way to be back, and to me, they may not have the skills, they may not have the capability, but maybe, but at the same time, I've seen people who have skills but no confidence, so they have all the skills, so they've got the knowledge, they've got the skills and everything, but they just don't have the self. It's like riding a bicycle, but because you had an accident, you have all the skills to ride a bicycle, but you just don't want to ride, right? And then you come in and you trigger something in them, and then you give them that self-confidence, and then you see they'll far outperform everybody else. So it's sometimes you like, why you hire this person, like who's this, but give them some space, give them some time, and give them that confidence. Boom. So to me, I don't really discount everybody. I kind of that's the problem sometimes. Like, I want to hire everybody, right? But I think at the end of the day, there's a couple of intellectual curiosity. The ability to see things and read things and be hyper aware are very important. I think ultimately that drive is one of the elements, not necessarily and you see hidden gems, and to me, hidden gems are those that. Usually the issue is self-confidence, right? Usually they got everything except the self-confidence. So like, okay, this one is hidden gem, because that you can take them and make them into superstar. And we've done so with so many. If you look through, the head of PwC, HR, Vinesh, there's so many guys who came in, suddenly, boom, now, head global, head of a big company, HR, or CEO of a big company, and Jermaine and others. And throughout the years, we've had so many that has come through us, given them that dose of confidence, and then boom, they are monsters. You can't stop them now, So, but such is life, right?
Well, thank you so much, Roshan. If I have to kind of close this interview, this chat with you, what would your giveaway be that would leave, kind of like something for our viewers to think about in their own self-leadership journey?
Yeah, I think take time to reflect, right? I think reflection is very important, because we don't get that pocket to really think through what do we want. I was just talking to a group of guys who are graduating from Sunway University today, and I was saying, look, you need to take stock and ask some questions, ask some hard questions, figure out what your hidden gem is, figure out who you are, figure out what you want, because after that, finding the solution to the job, or finding whatever the next step, is very easy once you've understood the end goal, right? And so to me, I think try as best as you can. Sometimes you can't, and if you can't, then explore, right? Explore meaning like do stuff that you never do. Ooh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do sales. I'm like, dude, try it, right? And I know when I came back to Malaysia, I took on a business, and I was so used to being the finance guy and all this strategy stuff. Suddenly I'm like, running a business, and I'm like, what's the number one thing in the business? Sales, right? I'm like, I have to go meet customer and convince them to and learn engineering, right? Because I had to understand engineering terms to convince customers on all kinds of different engineering permutation. But when I did that, and I was like, hey, this is not bad. And after a while, I'm tired. Okay, enough of that, right? Let me do some research, and then I went into research. Okay, I'm doing learning now. I'm doing instructional design and e-learning. I'm like, okay, enough of that. Let me try a talking job, HR. Let me go this, and let me go technology. But at the end of the day, you're like, okay, it's okay, because I think the world is about networks, and I think the more nodes that you understand, right, the better you're going to be. It's I think the world is changing from this expertise, and there is going to be people that are pockets of experts in different spaces. But think about this: context keeps changing. So if you're a digital marketer, you say, I'm so good at digital marketing. But when context change, when new software comes, and Apple this is update now and says, okay, I'm not going to use new security laws on emails and this. And, oh, the guy's doing Mailchimp and SI. Oh, I don't know what to do. But that's life, right? And whereas the flexible person, okay, cool, that's happened. Let's do something else. Let's do something else, right? And that's because you got many nodes, right? And you've kind of figured out many different sockets in life, and you're able to say, okay, this socket don't work, I go to another one, I go to another node, I go to another node, when I'm able to leverage that efficiently. So to me, learn as many things as possible. Explore as many things. I mean, when I say learn, it's not so much learn, because learning is going to come to you, right? If you get it right, you get Clayton and Nicole, everybody will have learning come to you, right? But I think what's going to happen is more important is expose yourself. So you have that ability to be hyper. You're able to see dots. John Chambers says this. The best ability is to connect the dots. But then I always say, okay, you can connect the dots. But if you don't know the dots exist, how are you going to connect the dots? So start with knowing what the dots are. At some point in time, when you got many dots, you'll see some pattern. Okay, but that skill comes later. The first skill is to figure out what the dots are, right? And to me, I think if everyone can figure out the dots, then you can see, oh, what's happening in Malaysia? What's happening? Oh, you're able to see the dots, and you're able to then connect it and then make the right call.
So it's to read widely. Now, Roshan, I always imagine this. You are constantly like this whole machine that's really, the whole machine in the brain is constantly moving, thinking, exploring. Is it always been like that with you? I mean, what do you do to slow down? Even Eva has this question that goes in a similar line. Has there been a moment that you feel like shifting your fifth gear to maybe third gear to slightly slow down your pace in life? What do you do? What do you do to slow down?
I think the better question is not so much slow down, right? It's what I got a friend who says, hey, what for you sleep? Because one day you die, you can sleep all you want, right? And I still sleep, right? But I think the better question would be, as long as you are fueled to do something, and I'm fueled to practice and be a better football player, because I think maybe under 60, over 60 World Cup, when I'm 60, maybe I can play in a World Cup finally, or even play, practice my badminton really hard, so that maybe at some point I can represent Malaysia in badminton. But you see, that's hope, right? Old man, like, no way I'm going to get a cap, representing Malaysia. But never mind, you got that hope, so you keep practicing, right? And it's not. There's no why do you want to get down to be slow when there are things that is exciting, right? I mean, if you think about it, right, all of us want to be young forever, and I think we can, right? I mean, nobody's saying you have to age on, right? So but you have to find something that excites you and keeps you going, right? So to me, I think that at some point in time, I do, right? I mean, I watch all these crazy, ridiculous, stupid series that take hours and hours. I'm like, why did I do that? Sometime to slow it down, and I do my daily walks and other things with my wife and so on. But and I know, Lisa, I'm back to the gym. At 6 o'clock. I know I see Lisa sometimes in the gym, but I'm back there, right? The date open next day. I'm like, boom, I'm there. But I'm the first one. I'm 6:30 a.m. there, so nobody's there before me. But so I to me, but what fuels me, right? I want to be fit, so that when I'm 80, when I'm 90, I just saw the world record for 100 meters at 100 years old is I don't know, not so 27 seconds or something like. So I'm thinking maybe when I'm 100, I can break the 100 meters world record. But then it means I must live to 100, right? And be able to run at 27 seconds or whatever the number is, right? So okay, that's a goal, right? So maybe I can one day have a world record, right? So let it be, right? But that's why, so my question is not so much about fifth gear or third gear or whatever, right? It's what gear you need to be at the right point. So if I need to be first gear talking to my son, I better be in first gear, right? If I need to be fifth gear to smack the team around, to get up and running on Nicole, then let's be in fifth gear. If I need to be on, so your gears are dependent on what you need to do, right? At certain point in time, right? And I think there are certain periods are you frustrated. I mean, you got teenage children, you always very frustrated on, right? But I always tell myself, okay, never mind. This is that 8-10 years that you have to go through in life, that every parent goes through, having teenage kids. but that too shall pass, and then it will come a next era, right? So that's how we, like Sashi says sometimes, situational gears, right? Yep, it is.
Well, Roshan, you definitely infuse this with a lot of energy. I mean, first and foremost, it's your way of learning life from your childhood, through fun, through mischief, through bravado, through courage. You definitely have um, embraced and also journeyed through life by looking at all the bright sides, being really optimistic, and going ahead as well. You have all this vision and goals. First of all, your health of wanting to still compete at the age of 80. So that drives you. So it's looking from what I can observe and learn is that you're a man who has goals, constantly training goals, constantly having that goal post in front of you, and then kind of like putting it further and further, and then having more goal posts, so that you're always driven, always energized, always wanting, leveling up and elevating. And thank you so much for sharing all these gems, your journey to leadership and self leadership to start, so that it inspires us all to be self leaders ourselves. The show is brought to you by Leaderonomics. I want to thank Shasi for serving us. And Roshan, I wish you a fantastic week ahead. I'm Lisa Wong. It's been an honor serving you. I'd like to thank all the people who commented on the show. And guys, be fulfilled, live a purposeful life, and see you next time. Goodbye.